We've got medieval wall structures surrounding us. We're starting at the rear of York's fabulous art gallery, and we are in the, hello, Rose, is that? Rosebud, yep. We are in the edible woods. So appropriately, the first of our sculptures, so edible woods, by the way, links back to the role of the monks as botanists. Things they grew both for dietary purposes, but also for kind of medicines. They're very interested, of course, in the botanical qualities. So something also very interesting in eating is the vulpine, the urban fox. And frequently now, if you walk around York late in the evening, one of the things you're likely to encounter on the streets is a fox. Hi, lethargy. They don't like us very much. When they see us, they often run away very quickly. But this is new for this year. The fox wasn't here, or if it was, I missed it in years gone by. I believe it's kind of new for this year. And so for those that haven't seen these sculptures before, you can see it's a kind of chicken wire mesh. And they're a kind of strange construction because the further away you get, they appear to have kind of more form, shape, structure, mass, if you like. But the closer we get, the more that kind of dissipates. The ethereal kind of ghostly quality comes to the fore. And we see that what we think we know isn't actually real, which I guess is a kind of interesting metaphor. But I think it's a fabulous addition, the fox. I hope you like Mr. Fox, fantastic Mr. Fox, as Roald Dahl would say. It's a great start because in many ways they are the ghosts of the modern city. They live amongst us because we're so wasteful in terms of the food. It's a lot easier for a fox to root through the bins at 3 in the morning to eat half-eaten McDonald's than it is to hunt living creatures. And so, like seagulls, like rats, like pigeons, they've come to live alongside us, but always out of view, if they can help it, only coming out at night. So what a great way of thinking about ghosts. Fox. Wonderful start. Not here last year, so I hope you enjoy Mr. Fox there, your very first one. I can't get too close. I love how he's got his front paw raised. They always kind of remind me, halfway sort of between a cat and a dog, a fox. And he's got his front paw lifted very tentatively. His ears are up, very alert, looking for what's going to happen next. So whether he senses danger or opportunity, perhaps both. It's not entirely clear. But I do think it's a wonderful start. So I must make a confession and say that I don't know where all these sculptures are. I do know these gardens very, very well. So I've got a good idea where to look. But they only arrived today. So consequently, I haven't got a map. I don't know where they all are. So we can discover them together. So I remember watching foxes playing in the street at 4 a.m. in Putney in London. I mean, that's what they are, is they live alongside the urban animals. But they are timid or cautious. They've learnt to be careful around us and prefer not to be. We've got some very near us. When Humphrey sees them while he's nighttime walking, he goes mad because we're very close to a railway line. And they love the environments railway lines provide because very few people go down there. Now, I think there is a couple around this side. So I hope we're all well, and love this to remember the last one John did. Fantastic, Robin. Great to have you with us, all the way from Brooklyn. So let us find our next sculpture. Here it is. So you may remember this time we're seeing this a lot closer. Last time this was actually up on the balcony. It was over there. If I sort of pan up, it was right on the balcony of the art gallery, appropriately because it's an artist. And thankfully we can now get him much closer and we can see Monsieur l'Artiste up close and personal. And I think it's fabulous to have him out in the open. Here he is with his easel. We come round, you see his delicate handling of the brush. Second. It says till 6 on the... It says 6 on the bid stuff. Yeah. Let me just give me 2 minutes when you just finish up. So we've got an artist here being captured, and of course it was the visions of the artist, at least Turner amongst them, that was to, if you like, create the sense of the magic and the beauty of York being captured on the artist's easel. We're being hustled to kind of move out, which is rather unfortunate because the timing is until 6 o'clock. But anyway, we'll get to the main gardens. There's plenty to say in there. The next of the sculptures is a musician. Appropriately for York, given our history of busking. She's here, I think, a Victorian lady, Edwardian lady, playing the fiddle. Beautifully rendered, and again, coming in, we look at the face, and they seem to hold this expression for us. But again, the closer in that we come, the more, in effect, it disappears. It's a beautiful structure, very musical, poised, just lovely elegance and shape. I think the shape of the kind of fabric is really captured in the folds of the skirt. So finally, just before we check out the gardens, favourite from last year, featured photo today. He's on kneeling knight. Very natural, isn't it? The knight kneeling in prayer. You can see he's a crusader. He has the emblem of a cross on his helmet, so we know he's a crusader. And of course, the Crusades were religious war. York played a large role in recruiting knights and funds for the Crusades. Of course, with the mission to capture Christendom from the Islamic forces, to capture back Jerusalem. But of course, in doing so, it meant that men were being sent to fight and to kill. And yet we know the commandments say, thou shalt not kill. So how do we square the circle? Well, the church found a way. It gave carte blanche, a white piece of paper to these knights. To kill in the name of God was acceptable, provided they did their religious penance. And so monks and knights were bound together. The monks would pray for the knights. So in effect, it's like you've got a superpower praying on your behalf. So I say, unfortunately, we're going to have to depart the garden because despite the advertised timings on the thing, it's they wanted to shut. So we'll perhaps clarify that ahead of the next time that we come in. Thank you. So into the main body of the garden, and the rest of this is open for the rest of the tour. So thankfully, that's great. And there's a figure here that interests me. I think last year she was down by the gatehouse, and it's not entirely clear to me what she is, what period she is, the sort of fashion of her sort of clothes. It isn't immediately kind of apparent to me. Well, Carolyn, they would be super spooky lit up at night, but unfortunately the gardens aren't open at night. So as a result of that, that's something you don't see. I think they ought to do it for like at least a couple of nights a year. I think it'd be absolutely fantastic to see them kind of lit up. But that, to my knowledge, doesn't happen. But it would definitely be, I think, a very, very cool addition to have an evening opening. Unfortunately, because of resourcing and costs and so forth, the gardens close at 6. But anyway, so I don't know what this woman is, but what I will say is that she is dressed in very modest clothing. And it may well be that her location, you can see there she's got an apron on, some kind of house coat, a very, very simple sort of belt, ties at the waist. I'm going to infer that she's an inmate of the workhouse behind us, because the building behind us, you see with the sort of triangular eave stuck up, was York's first workhouse. And the workhouses were places where, in effect, were created prisons where the crime was poverty. It is a sort of fascinating insight into the kind of Victorian mindset, this idea of the worthy poor and the unworthy poor, and that somehow it's kind of moral decadence, laziness that was creating the poverty, that was at the root, if you like, of people's life outcomes. They didn't see, the way the life was kind of stacked against people as being a reason why they saw idleness, okay, as the kind of root cause. So consequently, under very sort of poor laws, they created a system whereby if you couldn't look after yourself, you'd be put into the workhouse. And people would fight with every last breath they had not to go to the workhouse. It was demeaning, it was humiliating, and it was horrible. Deliberately so, it was designed to be the least of all safety nets. You'd be forced to wear prison-style uniforms eat terrible food, and do demeaning labour. Husband and wives split up, families split up. The whole thing was to make it so awful, you do anything rather than plan to move into a workhouse. So I don't know whether that lady is anything to do with that. She moved from a different era. But it seems to me it kind of fits the narrative of that location and seeing somebody there. So that's my take on that sculpture. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it'd be great to have a fundraiser, an evening lit up with the ghosts. I think that would be absolutely fab. I don't know why they don't do that, but obviously that's perhaps something they can think about. So again, we're keeping our eyes open, looking out for the sculptures as we kind of wander into the main body of the garden. So for those that aren't aware, you're looking at the remains of St Mary's Abbey, what was once the largest, most well-endowed monastery in northern Britain. York, historically going right back to Roman times, had been England's second city, the capital of the north, and so consequently it was in York that you would find the biggest, the grandest, the richest, the most elaborate and ornate buildings. And St Mary's Abbey was most certainly one of these. It was a Benedictine monastery. So it was monks that followed the order of St Benedict. And it was established in the 11th century. The building you're looking at right now, largely finished by the early part of the 13th century. So by the kind of 1240s, it was all sort of done and completed. And so where we are now was a community of monks. The next two sculptures, somebody's just having a photo taken by them, so we'll take it a minute. He's representative of the Abbey. This is an area where monks would have lived, prayed. The idea of being a monk, of course, was to work, to pray, to contemplate, to talk to God directly. And it was believed that monks, in effect, had a hotline to God, that God listened to the prayers of monks. And so this is why the monks were sought out and asked to pray on the behalf of humble sinners, because they had an authority that the laity simply couldn't muster. It was believed that God would listen to the prayers of monks. And so whilst the monks went into the monasteries to withdraw from daily life, the reality is they were continually confronted with daily life through the visitors, through the pilgrims, for those coming to the monasteries seeking to purchase prayer. The commodification of prayer is one of the kind of strangest sort of ideas we can possibly think of, prayers for sale. And yet that's what defines the medieval period. Is these monks were a vessel that allowed people to behave in the ways that they wish to, whether that be in war, in commerce, and other behaviours, but to seek forgiveness by the intervention of monks, by the strength of their prayer and the strength of their piety, that they could, if you like, change the outcome, change what would happen to people after their death. The result. I think these are beautifully well positioned, because I think when you're looking here at the kind of the wire mesh we see behind the ancient stone ruins, obviously, of the Abbey, we really get a sense of this translucent quality. Ethereal, Ronnie says, I completely agree. So again, coming in close, we see actually it's simply bent metal. But give it some form of distance, and suddenly we get texture, we get shape, and we get meaning. It is really, thank you, Pat, I'm enjoying it. It is such an interesting medium as in kind of an art form, to choose to work in kind of shaped metal. Because of course it has a necessary rigidity to kind of stay still, although there are slight movements in the wind. If you just notice, we've got a gust of wind and it moved from kind of side to side. So you've got kind of fluidity and a reaction to its environment. But also because of this, when they put in the kind of the shapes, they will, thank you, Elizabeth, they will stay. So we've got the creases in the fabric, which I love. You're really going to get the sense of the monks sort of shuffling along. The robes kind of right in the bottom. Thank you, Elizabeth. That's really kind of, I wish I could see that, but we don't usually bring them up on Streamlabs. I shall have a look at it after when I watch the replay. So we've got two monks in conversation, or certainly two monks greeting one another. In some institutions, Cistercian monasteries, Monks were silent, they didn't speak. That wasn't the case of Benedictines. They did speak. Interesting, that's where sign language comes from, by the way, in case you've ever wondered. Sign language of Cistercian monks, so they could communicate one another, things like what's for dinner? It's a fish. What's the signal for a fish? Right? Pass the salt, etc. So sign language comes from monks conversing with one another. It also meant, of course, that monks from different nations could talk to one another because they didn't need vocal language, they had sign language. So I rather like these two. I think that these are a great addition. They were both here last year, but in separate places, and I think it works really well having them together. Karen, I'm glad you really enjoyed it. Contemplative, absolutely, I completely agree. It really nails it, doesn't it? And there's something like the gentle tilts of the head here. And again, let me just try and show you what I'm talking about with this kind of face. So from here, we get a sort of distinctive, what's a side profile, don't we? But once we come around, it just disappears. It is such a clever. It's such a clever art form. So let us walk on. And of course, so the monks were here from all the way through the kind of medieval period, right up to the dissolution of the monasteries. So in 1536, when Henry VIII closed down the monasteries, when he turned what had become the banks of England back into cash, the monks were expelled, sent out into the world. So it may well be, of course, they're talking, they're praying, thinking about what's going to happen. The arrival of those that are about to shut down their world. Who knows? You see, he's nodding. Do you see that? It nodded. I said that and it nodded. That is, watch that back on the video if you don't believe me. But I said that, I made a suggestion, and this one he's doing it again. He's nodding. Most eerie. It's like I'm speaking. It's the shadows that give them form. Absolutely, it's what's not there. It's like a subtractive, isn't it? Of like, how much can you take away and leave behind still an essence of figure, of life? How in stillness can we get movement and life? It's kind of really interesting, isn't it? Because it's very easy to add detail in. But what happens if we keep taking away? How much can we take away? And still, Elizabeth, no, it's not a permanent display. It's open today, and it'll be on for another 6 weeks, which is kind of a shame. But they are absolutely beautiful. But let's walk on, because there's plenty more to see. I've just got to find them. I'm not entirely sure where they are. So I'm going to keep an eye out as I kind of walk around. But I think that these are very, very special indeed. I'm just going to do one more shot, just to give you one more shot from a slightly different angle. So I can just try and capture in. There's a lot of people here today, which is sort of predictable, I guess, given it's Saturday. But let me just drop down on one knee and just try and give you, because that might kind of work, I think, it's just a visual. But CC, I completely agree. It is it's an absolute credit to the artist and their studio. I think that they keep doing new ones each year, and each time they add to them. So there's kind of more. And we'll do second a tour of this, because it's not just in the gardens, they're scattered around York as well. So I think we'll do another tour where we kind of take in the locations where we can kind of find them in other parts of York. But right now I'm going to just try and find them in the gardens. But as we look at that wonderful light in the sky, so we're looking at the very sorrowful in the way. Yeah, absolutely agree. I agree. There is something in there. But I say maybe it's a reflection on their world is about to end. This ruin that we look at is synonymous with it. This is the close down. This is the end of, really the end of the age of faith, if you like, where suddenly it's the power of kings under Henry VIII shapes the will of what happens. It's no longer defined by the church. Ushers in what they then call the age of reason. But some would say it was utterly unreasonable what Henry VIII did in terms of not only closing down the monasteries, but taking the wealth, taking the money that had been set aside to pay for people's passage to heaven. Whether you believe that or not, people handed over that cash in the firm belief that that was the case, was then used to fight religious wars with mainland Europe, on warships, castles. They're highly controversial policy. But there we go. Let's see who else we can see. So I'll just give you another kind of panning shot here. So even without the ghosts, of course, one of my favourite locations in York, somewhere I come on a sort of pretty regular base do tours. So if you haven't joined me in York before, do drop in and come and see as I can take you around the city, but the gardens tours are always, I think, a distinct pleasure. Thank you, Natalie. That's very, very kind. Hippo character sucks his hand. Thank you. Fantastic. That is most generous. I'm grateful. Now then, over here, this is another sculpture that is new for 2023, and we're nearly at the end, aren't we? I can't believe that. In September 2023. Where does the time go? Who knows where the time goes? It's Fairport Convention. Anyway, this now is another religious figure, but of a different caste, a different gender, because we have a nun. You can see there in her garb, if you like, with the cross at her neck. She has her rosary beads. Tish loves that song. Yeah, Sandy Denny, isn't it? Who knows where the time goes? I can't remember. I can hear it, but I can't quite remember the name of it. Beautiful song. And so it's fair to say this isn't really to do with this monastery, insofar as the Abbey and the monastery, the religious community, was male only. So you wouldn't have really had women here, wouldn't have nuns here. But of course, there is and was a number of convents in York. There was altogether about 40 religious houses here at one time. So of course some of them were dedicated to women. But I wonder whether this is the famous Grey Lady of York. And if it is, that's a story that I'll go into in more detail on Halloween when we do our annual ghost tour, no doubt. But the Grey Lady of York is very famously a ghost in York Theatre Royal. And it's said that, well, there's a number of versions of the story, but all seem to agree on the same ending for whatever crime it was she committed, whether it was falling in love, getting pregnant, whether it was for heresy. She was bricked up and left to die in a convent that is now the location of the York Theatre Royal, not very far away from here at all. And that ever since, she has been a spectral presence in the theatre. Very large, looming up over the act. It appears repeatedly in one of the dressing rooms. So again, whether that is pure chance, I suspect it's not. Because I think that this York-based firm are doing points of references all about kind of York stories. So I'm pretty certain this relates to the Grey Lady of York Theatre Royal. And again, very clever, the twisting, the way that they've done the rosary beads. No, it's not rosary beads. What they call them is the various knots, isn't it? There's 3 strings: it poverty, chastity, and is it observance? I forget which. There's a knot actually I know how to tie, which does that. It's a monk. You put 3 knots in a row. It reminds you of your 3 vows. I remember learning that in Scouts. In those days, as teachers, things like that. That would be useful. Maybe thought we were going to go into religious orders at some point. But isn't she just wonderful? And again, the way the light is capturing, it's ethereal. I think the background has moved back a little bit of the dark green really works. I think you've got a really kind of nice kind of contrast. And where it catches the light, we've got like a silvery kind of glow. We come in, of course, there's light and shade. Again, the closer we get, the more it disappears. Not quite so much on the cross stitching, because it's done with denser wire, tighter, to create the kind of cross shape. But again, all sort of subtlety is lost at this distance. Pan it back, and once again, we get the features. So, if she is a ghost, if she's that ghost, I think it's a very good rendering. And you would certainly be pretty darn spooked. Oh, look as well, there is a cross at the bottom of her. I hadn't seen that. Isn't that wonderful? Not seen this medium for any art or festival display. Yeah, I agree, Alpha Dog. I think it really does bring to mind, you can't get much closer to the imagination of what it would be like to see. I mean, I don't know, have people seen ghosts? I have once, and I was really thrown by it. I thought it was completely, it didn't happen. I was in denial about it for a long time. It happened to somebody else in the same place. So I thought, well, I described it, they described precisely the same thing that happened to me. So at that stage, you think, oh, okay, maybe that was a ghost. But I don't know. I'm still kind of, Robin has, interesting. I mean, obviously, if you want to share that story out something, but you think you're crazy. Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I'd felt something in that location a few times previously, a sense of just not being alone. Nothing more than that, but you know when you sort of think there's somebody there, without seeing or feeling anything, just that sense of you're not alone. It's a sixth sense. It's like a little prickling sensation that we get, like being watched. You kind of feel, you sort of see these Hollywood movies, you see a voyeur, somebody kind of watching through a spy hole. You think that person must have some sense, don't you think, of being watched? I always think that, so you think, is that realistic? Could you be sort of having an eyeball to peering at you and not know? I kind of feel that I would know somehow. And it sort of felt like that. I felt like I wasn't alone. And it happened repeatedly in the same location. So I wouldn't tell, it's actually my holiday. So, and I just missed it for a long time, but then a guest reported the exact same thing. I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't mention Leslie. I don't know if Leslie's on, but she didn't say anything. So I'm guessing it didn't happen while she was staying at the house. So this is lovely. Look at the rockeries. I'm just going looking out now for the next ones. I think there's some sort of down here. And more than once. Huh. And even 3 days later, I'm showing an apartment. Yeah, well, there's quite a lot of those stories, isn't there, of people passing over from one realm to the next, that they feel they want to communicate something. Perhaps somebody be aware of their passing. There does seem to be quite a lot of instances of that, but we'll talk about that on Halloween. We're definitely in ghosts mood on Halloween. I always love going out and doing ghost tours in York. I don't do that many, so it's always nice to do 1 or 2 a year. I'm just going to look at the borders over here and the flowers before we go. I've spotted our next one, so we're within range. We'll just have a look at the flowers before we do, because it's always nice to take a moment to have a look. Feel deprived as a ghost virgin, says Tish. Well, keep them peeled. You never know what might be on this tour. And they're just lovely, lovely blooms, just to give that sense of colour. So the building in front of us, the Hospitium, has got a fascinating past, in that it was once a place of hospitality for a very specific target audience. This was a place to stay for pilgrims. To pilgrims, religious travellers, regular people that made physical journeys for a spiritual purpose. A really kind of big element of medieval faith. And so generally speaking, they would come to a place of religious importance. And in York's case, that was to come here to visit the Abbey, to come and pray and work and live alongside the monks. People believe that monks were best placed to get a place in heaven. So consequently, if you couldn't be a monk, next best thing, come and hang out with the monks, right? It kind of makes sense. So consequently, people would come here, walk here, generally speaking, from wherever their location was, and come and stay with the monks. Now, this building dates from the 14th century, and it's a fabulous building, restored in the Victorian era, and it now operates as a wedding venue. And right now there's a wedding on, so that's fantastic. People have special memories in there. So it's kind of appropriate that our next 2 sculptures relate to a wedding. Although I'm not quite sure if I was involved in a wedding here, I should necessarily welcome these 2 sculptures. But let's see what you think. So the first figure that we see, it seems to, I want to see a ghost, Ronnie Lynn says. Never know. Careful what you wish for. And who knows you haven't already. Perhaps something a little more attuned to it. But I don't know if that's the kind of thing. Is it like a wavelength, like a radio? Like sometimes you can pick up a really strong signal, sometimes a weak signal. Could it be that? Who knows? Anyway, what is interesting, I think, with ghosts is that, all the way back throughout human history, to our earliest forms of communication within kind of hieroglyphics and so forth, is the idea of what happens to us after we die is central to human existence. So anyway, in this case, we have a gentleman who's been laid up to, haven't he? And he has a very elaborate bow tie. And Alfred, yes, he's full of history and lovely. And he's carrying a top hat. So very much dressed up to the nines. We think, what is it that's going on? We turn around and we see he's got a tailcoat on. So very much part of the era. But even so, he's splitting his tailcoat at the back there. He's definitely dressed up for an occasion. So what is that occasion? When she's a wedding venue, the story seems to be, to relate to, a story of a bride that was jilted at the altar. I don't believe he has got the ring. I think he had a ring last time, but I don't think he's got it this time. And thank you, Tim. Some people are more sensitive to ghosts. I think that's interesting. Like a radar, how well your mood is attuned to it. Interesting. So it seems that these two relate to a story of a bride who was jilted, that was to be married in a church very nearby. And that when she was jilted at the altar, she stormed out, obviously in tears, distraught. But very near to the river, it seems that apparently she slipped into the river and drowned. And here, I think, we have the best man who's giving pursuit. Obviously, the best friend of the groom probably had no idea he wasn't going to turn up. So is that the kind of scene of human drama that's been played out here? Now, over here, we have the figure, pursuit, the bride, Ghost Bride. That film, The Ghost Bride. I imagine that. What idea there's a film called The Ghost Bride? Is it a children's film? I think when the kids are young, it's The Ghost Bride. But anyway, we can work that out. So here she is. And I think you can probably see what the artist has done here is very clever. It feels like through the veil we can see anguish, despair, hurt, whole range of emotion. Tim Burton, I thought it was, yeah. The Corpse Bride, that was it, the Corpse Bride, not the Ghost Bride, the Corpse Bride. You just watch it a lot. Squirrels all over the place, yeah. But can you just see that raw, almost unprocessed numbness of emotion? It really is, I think, a powerful, incredibly powerful. This one was here last year, so I've had a chance to sort of look at this a couple of times to kind of think how I feel about this. But to me, it's probably one of the most successful of all of them, of capturing human emotion as well as, of course, human form and movement and those things. And if this one moves as well, I will get freaked out. So far, it's absolutely tish. And the beautiful cuffs, as you can see here. And as we turn around, we can see someone stole it. Maybe stole the ring. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We can see, of course, the, what's it called? The train, isn't it, behind? So I'm going to walk around the tree so you can get her in kind of three cities. She does go a bit demonic. I mean, I think it's the sort of raw, unprocessed kind of fury and shock. She did have a ring in her hand. I think she did, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So maybe, as I say, somebody's taken a souvenir, which is rather unfortunate if they have. Souvenir, of course, from the French to come to see. But isn't she absolutely wonderful? I think it's an enormous kind of success, this one. I think really, really, really speaks, I think, to an awful lot of people. Oh, hang on. I think maybe she got the ring on top. I'm trying to be good and not cross over the barriers, but there's definitely... The veil's made exactly the same stuff, but it looks to be, to me, lethargy, that it is of a smaller mesh. Let me just try and zoom in a little bit. Let's see if we can do that. Oops. Yeah, can you see? I think the grade of the metal is a kind of finer mesh, a smaller hole, so it gives a more sort of solidity to it. But I think it works incredibly well as a result. It kind of really works as a spectacular contrast. But I think it feels to me like she's almost got a face veil on as well. Let me just try and get a bit closer in. And look at that. Let me just turn around, because I don't think that's the best light. I'm just trying to give you the brooding quality of the face. I think is absolutely astonishing. Let's go back out again. And again, as we go out, we see more. It does look like silk leather. I completely agree. It's a metallic silk. Isn't it strange? But that sense of movement and flowing and lightness is captured in something that is relatively dense and not quite solid, but it's metal. I am absolutely full of kind of admiration. The puffing of the sleeves. Everything just contributes to a sense of the 3D, but also this see-through. Isn't it just... I agree, Mariano. Brilliant way of putting it, that amazing sensitive portrayal of emotions. And that's a perfect description. I'd be proud of that line if I said it myself, so I'm going to read yours out and give you a thumbs up. Give yourself a pat on the back. That's a great line. But again, as the light moves and it filters through, we see the different elements. And they say, the more we look, the harder it is to see. Which is probably true about life, isn't it? The closer we try and examine things, the more confusing the picture becomes. It's actually at a distance where we get the most clarity. A wedding gone wrong. Beautiful spirit country. Absolutely, Lauren. A wedding gone wrong. Something should have been about coming together ends up being about falling apart, coming apart. It's the ultimate kind of irony, isn't it? Tragic irony in that. So there we go. The bride and her groom. So we go and look for somebody else. Let me just take a twisted tree behind it. It's a twisted story. So let's pull back and get the twisted tree as well. So hopefully you're enjoying this tour. Hopefully Linda and friends over in Pennsylvania, this is making up somewhat for your lack of sunshine. Hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of our late afternoon sunshine here in York. So Rose, what kind of writing do you do? You must tell us about what is your genre, as you might say. What do you are you a fiction writer, a non-fiction writer, an academic writer, commercial writer, a copywriter? What is it you write? Do tell us about that. And right, should we walk on? Should we go and find another sculpture, see what we can find? Now, from this point onwards, I'm kind of flying blind because I don't really know what's here and what's what, but I think I can probably find Movie spectacular. Thank you very much. That's so nice of you to say so, Linda. And this is great, John. Thank you. CC, you're most welcome. We talked about painters earlier on, just before we go. So the light is lovely. This is a scene that the famous artist James W. Turner painted. So he set up his easel and did a painting of the gates here coming into St Mary's Abbey. Tina, yeah, we're not far from the Minster. We're probably 5 minutes walk or so. York is small. You're everywhere near the Minster. In fact, if we go to the other side of here, then you'll be able to actually see the top of the Minster. But isn't that a wonderful scene? And of course, in the medieval period, you wouldn't be able to see it as we see it, because obviously in that stone archway there had been stained glass. So you wouldn't actually be able to see through the window to the rear. I think I'm still looking at the zoom, which come off that. Okay. So isn't that a wonderful sight? It's a great place for your photo being taken. We used to do Instagram tours. We should take people's pictures here. I was really happy with how they turned out. So, face orange razors eyebrows. Oh, okay. So, let's just see if we can get a glimpse of the Minster. I think if I come over here, we can probably just capture a little glimpse of the Minster, I'll guess. If not, probably because it's sort of slightly too low. No, he's Tina. So he's behind this kind of row of buildings here, behind the Tempest Anderson, sort of directly in line where the kind of blue clouds are. The Minster's probably about 5 minutes walk away from here. So, onwards and upwards. Let's go ghost hunting. So, those that watch the ghost shows, if you've got any suggestions of where I need to go to find them, if your intuition is prickling, it is. Thank you, Laurie. That's a lovely thing to say. It's lovely to have you on, and I enjoy doing it, which I hope comes across. I don't tour that much. I couldn't tour every day like some people do. I never want it to feel like a job. It's a pleasure, and luxury, and an honour, if you like, that I get to spend time with people, and that I know that whether people are here now or watching later on YouTube, that I'm communicating and getting, to talk to people, which is absolutely lovely. So it's a rare treat that it didn't used to have, and now I do. So long may it continue. Thank you, Cheryl. Pleasure's ours. That's lovely. It's a little sneaky peek there of the neoclassical Yorkshire Museum. It's called the Museum Gardens because the Yorkshire Museum is in the centre of it. Oh, I know where there's one. I think there's one at the observatory. So observatories. So there's the wedding venue, the hospitium. Of course, all about observing space. And there's two sort of famous, within their field, well-known astronomers associated with York. One, chap called Thomas Cook, not the holiday chap, but somebody else who painted a telescope, and also a chap called John Goodrich. I believe I've probably told you about him before. He lived at the treasurer's house in poverty. He was blind and deaf, so deaf and dumb, but he observed the night sky. He lived in a sort of little garret and spent hour upon hour mapping and measuring, and he invented a way of what we now use to measure the universe. Crazy, right? So this kid with a disability, very little by way of formal education, but has a guy that comes to him and teaches him. He's so capable, he redefines scientific measurement. And we use his work to this day to establish how far things are in relation to other things in the galaxy universe. So John Goodrich lived at the latter part of the 18th century. So in the 1780s is when he died. He did all this from his little garret in a house in York, and he died aged 21. Let's talk about an early achiever. So I think it's in the spirit and tribute to him, but I think this is actually about Thomas Cook. So again, we can see here Thomas Cook, the fellow of the Royal Society and Royal Astronomical Society. He was an optical instrument maker, designed in 1850 a refracting telescope in this observatory. And refracting telescopes, of course, went on to become the main way of looking at night sky. So new for this year. There we go. Can you see him? How well? Underground vaults. Oof, a bit scary. Edinburgh's a spooky kind of place. So I don't know how much we can see given where the light is. So I'm going to try and turn around. We've got Thomas Cook, the Victorian astronomer, in his garb, in his top hat, looking out through the telescope, observing the night sky. Thank you, man. That's very kind. No, I've never written a book. I'm in the oral tradition. It's the oldest, one of the oldest ones. Stories and dance, primitive music, about the oldest. As long as people have been around, people that have told stories. So I see myself in that tradition. I'm not an author or a teacher or an academic. I'm a storyteller, proud to be so, and see nothing further that would I want to sort of go any more than to work in this oral tradition. I find it deeply enriching and satisfying. I say, and what's lovely is you think that, how far back we go. It was the storytellers that people were drawn to, sitting around the fire on a night, listening to stories. Mythology, you might call it now, making sense of the world around us through stories. And then, as now, people showing their gratitude and helping and supporting storytellers. So I think, it's a very nice thing to be. So when people say you should be a teacher, you should be this or that, I'll smile and nod and say thank you for, I know what's intended as a compliment, but for me, being a storyteller is quite the perfect thing to be. The voice is something that we all have, isn't it? And our ability to communicate, I think, is central to the future of the world, isn't it? How we can share understanding, how we can create bonds, how we can cement relations is, I think, central to how we solve the problems of the world. So I rather like this one. It's a new one. So let's have a look around, because the light right now isn't brilliant for seeing this one. So we'll just try one more time from this side. You might be able to get. But as ever, they are very much dependent on the backdrop, because it's obviously so high up. There's nothing but sort of sky and cloud. We're not getting, if you like, the kind of definition that I would hope for. So on that basis, let's walk on, and we'll hopefully find some more. So there are bound to be more. You just go find them. Don't know where they are, but that's the fun, isn't it? It's the journey, not the destination, as they say, isn't it? And the company that you keep along the way. And of course, the sort of pilgrimages we were talking about those earlier. Pilgrimages were kind of shared journeys. People embarking on these journeys together. Canterbury Tales, one of the most famous kind of novels of the medieval era, or rather, works of the medieval era, is about a bunch of people going on a pilgrimage, setting out from Southwark by the Thames in London, heading off to Canterbury in Kent, and telling stories along the way to kill the time, to entertain one another. And so we get these stories of, some of them are people very high in society, others very low, some criminals, some about surprisingly aberrant kind of sexual behaviour, the wife of Bath, and so forth. Great bunch of stories. Impossible to read in original language, but reading in translation, very, very good. So it's perhaps appropriate that the next one we're looking at here is, of course, the Archbishop. And one of the defining features of York is the Archbishop of York, an archbishop in the 7th century. So York has one of 2 archbishops in the Church of England. We can see here the mitre and the shepherd's crook, was portrayed as shepherds. We are the flock, little lost sheep, being brought back to the pack, the flock, as you might say. So we can see here the Archbishop. And the location of the Archbishop here is, of course, very significant. It's why we have such a grand minster, the grand cathedral. But it means, or it represents the fact that York is the focal point for Christian fellowship in the north of England. Absolutely tasty little sheep to be brought in. And that goes all the way back to the Roman era. And actually the Romans introduced Christianity to these islands. Under Constantine, he introduced Christianity to be, in effect, a cultural and social glue for their own empire, to give people something in common all the way across this kind of disparate range of nations that had been conquered by the Romans. So for him, it was about creating a common sensibility, common shared values, festivals and so forth, cultural practices. But when the Romans went, they took in effect their Christianity with them. The next people that settled on these shores came from Northwest Europe. We'd now call them pagans, Anglo-Saxons, non-Christians basically. And so by the early part of the 7th century, Pope Gregory in Rome decides that the next job on his inbox is the reconquest, the recapture, if you like, of the flocks of these islands to bring them back within Christendom. So he sends St. Augustine to London, and he sends the monks from Iona to York. And why did he choose York? Well, he chooses York because in the Roman era, there was 2 major cities of England. One, Londinium, London, the other, Eboracum, or York. So York was the capital of the north. So when Pope Gregory got out his maps of the British Isles, hadn't been updated for many centuries, what he saw was a country that was dominated by 2 cities. London to the south, York to the north. So he bestowed upon York, if you like, the authority that actually would have dissipated in the intervening centuries. But he recreated the sense that the Romans had done and made York the capital of the north. So it had its own archbishop. So, of course, Stephen Cottrell, the latest of our archbishops, he's the latest of a very long line. I grew up in the village, some of you will know, where the archbishop lived. So the archbishop is very much a presence in the city. And I'm jolly glad that he's represented here. But again, I'm not getting quite the contrast. I don't think this one is quite as well-fashioned as some of the others. So let's go around and let's see who else, what else we can find. There's bound to be others, but I'm flying blind, so I will have to just keep them peeled, as they say, and see what we can see. There are bound to be others to find. So we'll do a second part of this tour, maybe even a third part of this tour, depending on how many we find, because there are other locations in York where these are. So what we'll do is we'll do another tour where we go from place to place, the different locations. I can see another one now, so that's just seen 2 more. Co-interviews, that's good. I just want to have a little look around here just to make sure that there's nobody hidden. I'm thinking, where would I put them? And some are in trees as well. So they're very sneaky. There's the cats and eagles and all sorts of things that I haven't found yet. But if I repeat this tour towards the end of the run, by then I'll have found them all. But right now, I can't see on this side, so I'll just do complete this section. Otherwise, we'll go then and have a look at Dick Turpin and his horse. So who knows what Dick Turpin's horse was called? Dick Turpin, of course, the famous highwayman, executed in York in April 1739. So, for those that aren't from these shores, Black Bess. So if this is a QI, big Claxton quote, actually Black Bess is a fictional. We've no idea what Dick Turpin's horse was called. He had lots of them. He's a horse thief. So actually he had lots and lots of horses. But the idea that Dick Turpin road from London to York in a night to create an alibi is actually fiction. It was created in a book called Rookwood, published in the early parts of the 19th century, about best part of 80 years after he died. Actually, a chap called John Nevison, Swiftnick Nevison, that did the ride to York. So he is the owner of Black Bess. He actually has the accolades. But when the Book of Rookwood was written as a kind of romantic patron, a bodice ripper, as you still use that term, bodice ripper, a historical novel with lots of kind of lusty goings on and heroines that are swept off their feet by blackguards, the bodice ripper, right? They decided that Dick Turpin was a far more romantic figure than Swiftnick Nevison. And so, or Claude Duval was one of the famous kind of gentleman highwaymen of London. But nonetheless, the highwaymen were very real. Dick Turpin was a real figure, standard deliver and all that. And of course, it goes back to a time where there were very few roads in this country. And the roads that there were in a very, very poor condition. And so people, when they travelled, they didn't want to sort of popping out for the day. They're going to go and stay for a while, from one location to the next. So consequently, they've got their valuables with them. So it made them very, very vulnerable, of course, to attack. And given that there's only a very small number of roads, it's kind of predictable for the highwaymen where the coaches are going to be. So highway robbery became a huge problem in 18th century society. There's no police, don't forget. There was kind of dragoon guards that were stationed to try and prevent them and chase them off and get involved in gun battles, but there's no police. So it's very, very difficult for people. And ironically, what Dick Turpin was also a horse thief. He would steal horses in the south and sell them in the north. And what he argued was, what you need is fast horses. To outrun highwaymen, you need fast horses. So he was in the business of stealing horses and selling them to people on the basis that you could outrun Dick Turpin. If that is not cheap, I don't know what is. So Bess is tethered to the tree. Absolutely, yes, so that didn't happen last year. So Bess is now tethered. I think it's a wonderful kind of rendering of the Sunday liver. Absolutely, Stanley's me liver. But isn't it great? Again, the glistening. So the light is capturing it absolutely beautifully. The equine sculpture, I think you're absolutely right, is great. I really like that. It's really kind of successful. Speaks to me, that one. And again, the light is just right here in the way that it wasn't right for the astronomer. So it's just look really where we are, where we're located, what the light's doing at this kind of moment in time, as to what degree of kind of sense that we get. Should we go around the back and have a look at Bess's nether quarters? If that's not too... I'm calling it Bess just because... Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. Carpet of flowers and the multangular Roman fortress tower behind us. How fortunate we are in York. I never take it for granted. I hope that comes across. I never want to still sound jaded or, yeah, it's York, you've seen it a million times, because I don't feel that way. I'm always taken aback by York. And living here, I think that's kind of harder. So I never take my city for granted, and I hope that comes across. So there we go. The nevers, as you might say, of Black Bess. So again, the light's not so good here, so it's all seeing through. It's not creating the same impact we're going to hope for. So let's have a swing round and see what we can see from this side. And I'm sure there's more in the garden to see, so I'm going to have a kind of swing round the front of the museum and have a look down that way, see if there's any that we've missed. Because I think that there should be probably a few more in. So Dick Turpin eventually apprehended through his silliness. Come by Dick Turpin towards here the full nature of the story. But basically it's probably hubris that sees him captured. He's been Britain's most wanted man for quite some time. But when it becomes clear the authorities cannot defeat Turpin, all that's left is for him to defeat himself. And this is what he does. And he ends his days on a rope here in York on the 9th of April 1739. Executed in front, we believe, some of these of 30 to 40,000 people turned out to watch Dick Turpin hang on a rope. Best in the shade, absolutely, I think you're right. So I can't see any more on this side. So let's just have a head down and see what we've got left. We've got another maybe 15 minutes. We'll see. It may well be that that's the... Oh, that's right, yeah. There's one over here. Now, this is an unusual. In fact, if anybody can guess why there is a bear here, I'll be most impressed. I mean, you might know. You know, quick on the draw and Google it. But there's a very specific reason that there is a bear here. And we're in the museum gardens. If anybody can guess why there's a bear here, I will be mightily impressed, incredibly impressed actually. The bear was not here last year. But anybody want to have a little punt as to why there is a bear here in the museum garden, what that represents? Again, lots of squirrels in behind. Bear pits. It's a good guess. Not too far away. If I say that this was a pleasure garden in the early Victorian era, and that as a result of that, the leisure, because throughout history, an awful lot of people, the wealthy had people of leisure, really, they didn't have jobs to do. So the pursuit of pleasure and leisure. Circus, we're getting really close now, Patty, yeah. And basically, there was exotic animals kept here. Not dancing bears, no. So there was exotic animals kept here, like a zoo, basically, in the gardens to entertain the wealthy. And we're told there was tigers here, and of course, until about years 2000, we had peacocks here in the gardens. But we're told there was a menagerie. That's the word, Joe. There was a menagerie, exotic menagerie. And of course, people travelling to these grand tours would often have animals transported back for their pleasure and then donate them to their local menagerie. So quite where this bear had come from is not on record. What we do know is the keeping of this menagerie was not great because this bear escaped on at least 3 occasions. There are newspaper stories kind of relating to a general terror amongst the population. The bear was wandering the snickelways of York. Perhaps after the story of the black dog comes from the black bear, the beast walking through the snickelways. So at least 3 occasions the bear escaped. But isn't it wonderful that that's now part of this year's series of ghosts? He just like to sing, doesn't it? Was it Simon Smith's Amazing Bear? Perhaps he's the Amazing Bear. Maybe that's what he did. Did he sing the bear? I doubt it. But he does. Maybe he's roaring. Who knows what he's doing? But he is absolutely splendid. So I rather like the bear. So we'll keep on. I don't know that this may well be the last one I can find today. I'm not entirely sure. He's a rather thin bear, isn't it, Robin? But perhaps he's rather homesick and missing his friends. Are they live in kind of groups, bears? Professor John Phillips, first Give Museum, reached final straw when the bear got loose and chased around the garden. Thank you very much, Cheryl. There we go. So by 1831, they had enough. So it'd been going on quite a while. This bear was dead keen to establish his liberty. So this is a lovely story about York. You know, the idea of a bear running around the city centre, Victorians diving for cover, is a lovely image, lovely idea. And with the lesser known stories of York, it's always nice to when you hear that other people know these lesser known stories, because you think if you told that story, people think you're making it up. There was a bear in York, but no, there absolutely was. And as I say, if you've been here, 25 years ago now, you might have seen the last of the peacocks. The peacocks used to wander through this garden. So again, another ghost of York, I guess, is the peacocks. Not least because their distinctive cry, their very high-pitched yelp, is no longer to be seen, to be found. I'm just going to scan across here just to see if there's anything else that we can see before we finish up. If two, what we'll do, we'll walk up by the King's Manor. There might just be one up there, but I think that I've found all the obvious ones. I'd say it's the first day. Does the bear have a name? What a great name. I'm sure the bear must have had a name, Tina, at some stage. And in my recollection, I don't think I've ever known the name of the bear, or just the bear. But perhaps that's something that, again, we can look up. And if we get to come again before the end of here, which I'm sure we will, like I say, what I want to do is there's about 10 locations across the city. The biggest concentration is here, without a doubt. So, and that gate's shut. Let's see if this one is. So we're seeing the kind of Roman fortress again. How pretty is that one? We're so fortunate to have all this nice kind of doorstep. Beautifully kind of laid out park. And Roman and medieval armaments built within. So again, I'm just scanning around. It looks like that gate's shut, so we can't go to the King's Manor. And is that one open? No, that's shut as well. So I think we really are kind of shut out. So I'll just walk you up here just to get a shame the ghost peacock. Well, I thought the ghost peacock was, which is sort of why I'm wandering around in these bits of gardens just to see. because they are absolute tinkers and cussers. They do hide these things, you see, to make you sort of work for it. So I am just doing, on your behalf, I'm working for it. And I don't think it's any great hardship to be exploring these rather fine gardens here in the centre of York. But this one, I put one up here and see how many people could find it. So I'm trying to imagine that if I was the in charge of positioning, where I would put them. And this would definitely be one of the locations I'd have gone for, but there you go. I mean, the peacock, yeah, well, I keep trying to look into it. But the difficulty is, of course, you don't want to bump into people when you're doing this. I do want to look at what you're seeing, so my kind of eyes need to be on the screen. But at the same time, I'm casting around frantically, just trying to see if I've missed anything or anybody. But I shall pop back in, and what we'll do is we'll have the second part of this tour probably in the next week or two. And then after that, we'll probably come back again here before you finish, before the light goes all together as well. And just seeing if there's anything down here, because obviously we are starting to get to that time of year where the light is no longer our friend. Is it where the night should be? It might have been in there, but we got chased out. So again, I'll have to just find out that as well about the timings, because on the official website it says the edible wood is open till 6, and the museum guards are saying no, it's 4:30. So that actually is clarifying. But anyway, we are, I think, done. I want to have a word with the staff on the way out. So I think we will take her up there. We'll be on an hour, just over an hour. So I think we've probably got the maximum value that we can. The bear goes, oh, that's fantastic. So the bear was banished. He didn't leave a bear behind, as you might say. He was sent away to London. He described it to be Regent's Park Zoo then as a result of that in London Zoo. Yeah. Good to know. Thank you for that, Cheryl. It's always nice to have contributions from the outside world that help us to finish up. So I think we'll call it a wrap, and we'll finish our tour. Park is going to be closing next few minutes anyway. So I'm going to say thank you so much to everybody who's joined me. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been lovely to come back to go looking, ghost hunting with you. And again, my absolute applause to the artist for creating these incredible sculptures, and for the city to being committed to keep on doing it. I'm sure there are financial pressures, so it's fantastic that this isn't something that they've thought, well, let's just cut that, because I think it really does add to the city. It adds to our thinking about it, our history, our culture, our stories. So, hats off to the York Bid, everybody else who's been involved in this Museums Trust. I think you've done a fantastic job. And upside down tree entrance to the garden. So I'm going to say adieu. I will hopefully see you tomorrow. If you're watching this live, we'll be down in South Yorkshire, village called Hooton Pagnell, very beautiful. And I hope you can join me. So from York, absolutely, there's lots of animals in the menagerie. So from York, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for all your support, encouragement. Thank you for the chat, taking part, making it live, making it interactive, making it social, making it a community. Thank you, one and all. I look forward to seeing you. Hopefully see you again soon. Bye-bye.